Ethan Walker moved to Ridgewood Street, hoping to escape his ruined life in Chicago. But the house he found was suspiciously cheap. Still, he signed the papers because silence was all he wanted. That night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., a heavy thud echoed from the attic. Ethan, half asleep, froze. The house had been empty for years, so what could be up there? Holding a dim flashlight, he walked through the creaking hallway and reached the attic door. Oddly, the doorknob was clean, not dusty like the rest of the house. Pushing it open, he found the attic empty except for a wooden chair placed perfectly in the center. On the chair sat an envelope with his name, Ethan. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single line, "You are not the first." The attic light flickered violently. When Ethan turned toward the stairs, a tall shadow stood at the bottom, completely still, watching him. It slowly raised a hand and pointed directly at him before vanishing in a blink. Panicked, Ethan ran downstairs and grabbed his phone, but the screen suddenly turned black. A message appeared, "Leave before midnight." Midnight had already passed. The temperature dropped sharply as he stepped into the living room and saw something even worse. The front door he had locked earlier was now wide open. Someone had entered, or someone had never left. Ethan slammed the door shut and backed into the kitchen, trying to steady his breathing. He convinced himself someone might be playing a prank until he noticed muddy footprints leading from the doorway to the basement stairs. He had not been in the basement. Following the trail, he reached the basement door, which was cracked open. A faint buzzing sound came from below, almost like whispering mixed with static. He descended the stairs slowly. At the bottom, he found an old CRT television, plugged in though the outlet was dead when he checked earlier. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of the attic, footage from a hidden camera Ethan had never installed. The video showed him asleep, then waking up to the thud moments earlier. But someone else was in the room with him, a tall, thin figure standing behind him, staring. Ethan gasped. He hadn't seen anyone behind him at that moment. The TV flickered again, and a new message appeared in glowing white letters. He's still inside. Suddenly, something shifted behind him. Ethan spun around, but nobody was there. The temperature dropped even lower. The basement lights blew out with a sharp pop, leaving him in darkness. A cold hand brushed the back of his neck. Ethan sprinted up the stairs and slammed the basement door shut. His heart hammered in his chest. There was only one thought in his mind now. He had to get out. But the house wasn't going to let him leave easily. Ethan grabbed his car keys and rushed outside. But the moment he stepped onto the porch, the street lights flickered and every house seemed darker than before. He reached his car, tried to start it, but the engine only produced a lifeless click. He looked up and froze. Every house on the street had their curtains slightly opened, as if the neighbors were all watching him. But the houses were abandoned. Ridgewood Street had been empty for years. Suddenly, a soft hum vibrated through the air. Ethan looked back at his house and saw the shadow figure standing in the upstairs window, staring down at him. Even from outside, its presence felt suffocating. Panicking, Ethan ran toward the closest intersection. Halfway down the road, he noticed the street repeating itself. No matter how far he ran, he ended up back in front of his house again. Time loop, reality trap. Something supernatural was in control. The front door slowly creaked open by itself, as if inviting him back inside. He heard a faint voice whisper his name. "Ethan, come back." He tried to resist, but his legs felt heavier with every step. It was pulling him, dragging him back toward the house. The last thing he saw, before the door shut behind him, was the tall shadow standing inches away, its hollow eyes fixed on him as if claiming him forever. Inside the house, everything had changed. The furniture was arranged differently. The walls were covered with scratch marks, and dozens of photographs were pinned across the living room. Ethan stepped closer. Every photo showed different people who had lived here before him. Families, couples, children, but all their faces were crossed out in red ink. At the center of the wall was a blank space, waiting for one last picture. His. A camera shutter clicked behind him. Ethan turned slowly and saw the shadow figure holding an old Polaroid. The picture developed in seconds, revealing Ethan's terrified face. The figure placed the photo in the blank spot on the wall. Ethan backed away, but the floor felt sticky. Looking down, he realized he was standing in a circle drawn in black symbols, binding symbols. The house wasn't haunted. The house itself was alive. and it fed on its residents. The walls began tightening, the lights dimmed, and the air grew thick as if the house was breathing him in. The shadow stepped closer and whispered its first and last words. "You are the last," Ethan screamed and ran toward the door, but it dissolved into darkness. His voice disappeared into the void. By morning, the house stood silent again. The chair in the attic had a new envelope. This time it read, "Welcome to Ridgewood Street's new owner." The camera in the basement turned on automatically, waiting for the next victim.